Hello and welcome to our weekly show we call The Art of Advocacy. I'm Charmaine Tanner. I'm a parent, a retired teacher, and now I do advocacy full-time for families, which I'm passionate about helping you make sure that your child gets that education that they deserve. And today we have a wonderful guest with us. If you missed our show last week, Chris Curry was on. And she is returning because she has more to share with us. And last week, Chris talked about preventing behaviors. Today, she's going to be talking about getting a better understanding of our kids' behaviors and how we can help teachers and ourselves learn to teach new behaviors so our kids still get their needs met, but in appropriate ways. So Chris Curry happens to live in Idaho, but she works with families around the country, so she can virtually be there to help families and schools problem solve things. She got her master's degree in special ed from University of Kansas, Chris?
Yes.
Yes.
Kansas University. Yes.
And she has been active in different organizations like Families Together in Kansas and also Families Together for People with Disabilities in the state of Washington. So she has a wealth of experience and expertise to draw from. I've asked Chris if she can give us a short synopsis of what she covered last week when she talked about preventing behavior, and then we'll get into our new topic. So welcome again, Chris.
Thank you. It's great to be here again. Was so much fun last time. It's first time on the Blue Jean and live on Facebook. So yes, this is a lot of fun. I'm going to try to share my screen so I can go over some of the things we talked about last time. And just a little bit more. I'm going to go back. Now, is that sharing okay? Do you see it
Yes.
up there?
Yeah,
All right,
so I see you.
See that? I'm going to kind of move you out of, whoops, did I lose it? Nope.
Yeah, I don't see your slide right now.
There we go.
There you are.
So, some of the things we talked about last time, and I can give you a brief stuff about me, is I do have a website, Chris Curry Consulting. Please go to that to get more information about what I do and also to join the Chris Curry Club if you have someone you'd like to call and talk to. And I'm not going to try to find those slides because I don't think I would be very good at it. But last time we covered the problems with planning, preventing a behavior problem. And I'm going to see if I can pull those up again. Let's see. And so this was just like down and dirty. If you really want to just take care of a problem quickly, then you're going to just try a simple behavior plan. So you're going to find out where the child has difficulty, looking at all the areas they have difficulty with, analyzing what's going on with the child, and then develop strategies that are in place prior to any behavior happening. So that's the whole point of prevention. It's what you do first. It's before you even think about, oh, what can I do to solve this behavior problem? You say, what can I change in me? What can I do differently? How can I change the classroom, the environment, to eliminate the need for the child to use the behavior that I don't want him to use? So if a child yells out in class all the time and you don't want him to do that, one of the things you can do is make sure that you call on that child prior to asking questions to the whole class so that that child gets a chance to talk and they don't have to yell out. Those are just simple things that you can do to eliminate a behavior. But now we talk about what if that doesn't work, and what if just changing what you're doing doesn't really help and you have a serious behavior problem that you need to eliminate. So here are the questions. We're going to go through these again because before you start any plan, you have to decide, is it worth the time and effort to address the behavior problem? So if you have a child who screams very loud and disrupts an entire class and an entire school, you will want to take care of that problem. And you're going to want to put a lot of time and effort into making sure that problem goes away, because that's going to be a problem that everyone agrees is a problem. The child screams a piercing scream every time he's asked to do something he doesn't want to do. So when everyone says it's a problem, not just you, you can't be the one that says, oh, I just don't like that happening in my classroom. We don't allow that. Or the way I like to parent is to have children get right up in the morning and get dressed quickly. And everyone else goes, I'm okay if he takes his time and he diddles around and has his breakfast first, watches a little TV, as long as he does get dressed and go. Well, you don't like that. Then you have to say that you see it as a problem, but everybody else doesn't. So you want to reevaluate. Is that really a behavior problem? Is it as bad as it seems is a huge one for data collection. You have to take data on any behavior before you decide to change it. Because as with the screaming, and I used this example before, if a child screams 4 or 5 times a day, that's a problem. If they scream once a month, it's not a problem. It's not as bad as it seems. It just seems really bad to you because you really don't like that. This one, however, is if you have a child who has a behavior that limits the places the child can go, you have to change it, because you never want to limit the places a child can go. So if you have a child that's a runner, running usually limits where you can go. You can't get out of the car and be left for a second because you dash off and go somewhere else. You can't go to church because you run out of the church. You can't go down the hall in school because you try to run out of the building. So you end up confining the child in a self-contained program where they end up spending the entire day, because if you let them out of the room, you lose control of them. You can't take the child shopping. You can't take the child on a walk. You can't take the child to the park. Running is a behavior that you need to help a child with so that they don't use that behavior to let you know that whatever it is they're trying to communicate. Maybe they just like to run. I don't know. If a student only has a few behaviors, is it ethical to change one, is another very important question. If a child can only bang his hand to get attention or tell you that he's upset, can you say, well, I don't want him banging on things? No, you can't. That's his one behavior. So until you teach him some other behaviors to use to communicate the same thing, you can't take that behavior away. And we often try to take behaviors away from a child when they only have 1 or 2 that they can use to communicate. And we can't do that. That's just unethical. Does the behavior interfere with the child learning or the way you wish to parent or teach? So you need to look at what you like in children. A lot of teachers like children to sit quietly at a desk and not move around. But if a child learns better pacing at the back of the room, and if they listen to you just as well, then they need to be allowed to do that. Just because you don't like to teach with children pacing in the back of the room isn't really the issue. That's your behavior problem, not the child's. I worked with a child once who would read a book. All the time the teacher was talking, he was reading a book. And the teacher was a very good teacher. And I questioned her. I said, he just sits and reads a book while you're teaching. And she said, ask him a question about anything I talked about. And you could ask this child any question, and he had heard everything she said. But because he needed so much input, visual input, as well as auditory, to stay focused, reading the book helped him stay focused on the auditory stimuli that was going on, her voice. Very difficult to understand, but what a great teacher. I mean, she recognized that, and it was fine. She said, you can sit and read the book, and as long as you can answer the questions, I know you're learning what I'm saying. The next thing you want to know is, would the person change if they could? And that's a problem we have with husbands more than children, I think, that they really wouldn't want to change. If they could change, they just like the way it is. So asking them to load the dishwasher in a different way because you don't like the way they load the dishwasher, a common problem with families, they're not going to change that because you know what? You don't have to ask them to load the dishwasher because you don't like the way they do it. So why would they change that behavior and learn how to do it your way and then have to do it more? So we have to really look at a child and go, would they change if they could? If it was possible for them to do a different behavior, or do they just like the behavior that they have? Are they really invested in the way they're doing it? And if they wouldn't change if they could, you're going to have to really do some rethinking again as to what you can do to negotiate what you want from that person versus what they're giving you. And then the last one is, would it be easier to educate the rest of the world about the behavior than to change the behavior? And a lot of times with children with autism, we have found that educating the rest of the world is actually a good way to do it. If a child needs to hold the shopping cart while you're shopping, if they can't let it go, if they need to walk down a certain way through the store, and someone says, well, just run in and get that and come out, and you go, actually, we can't. We have to stop at the video place. We have to stop at the produce, and we have to stop and look at something else, and then we can get the item and leave the store. And they'll say, well, why do I have to do that? I just need to go in with them. And you go, actually, it's easier for you to make those stops than it is to teach this child not to do it. So just do it. I just ran into that where somebody had a person staying at their home who was new to the home and wanted to watch TV. And the child with autism, who's a teenager, likes the TV on in the living room all the time, same station. And you don't change that channel, even though he's not in the room anymore. He's in another room and can hear it very well from 5 miles away. He has good auditory reception. So the person who was there said, well, I just want to watch what I want to watch. He's not even watching TV. And she said, it doesn't matter. You need to go downstairs and watch it on a different TV and not mess with this TV, because if you do, it's going to upset the entire household. And we're not doing that. We're not changing this whole thing so that you can watch a TV show. It's easier for you to go downstairs and watch it on a different TV. Once a person understood, and you don't mess with certain characteristics, it's just too hard, they did adapt their behavior, because it's easier for somebody who can understand it from both sides to adapt. So again, those questions are ones that you have to ask before you start any behavior program. So again, the 3 components in designing an individualized plan. Make note of that word individualized. No behavior plan works across the board. So just throw out school-wide discipline plans when you're talking about a child with a behavior problem. And you say, well, if a child does this, they're going to miss recess, or they're going to get detention. If they're late for class, they get detention. That's the school rule. It gets more difficult in high school because they have these school rules that everyone has to obey. And you say, well, that's just not happening with this child, because missing class or getting to class late has nothing to do with a behavior that he can control. He's really getting sidetracked on the way. He's got executive functioning problems. He can't get to class on time. So you give him detention is not individualized. That's something you do for all the kids in school. So one of the first things you do if you have a child with a behavior plan, is you say, okay, your school-wide discipline plans, out the window. Not doing that. We are going to change it. So just keep that word in mind, individualized. It has to be for one person, your child. It can't be, well, this works for all our other kids with autism. This works for all our other kids with Down syndrome. This works for all our other kids in self-contained. No, I'm sorry, that's not it. It's just what works for this child. So we did talk about the prevention, and we're going to move on today to talk about some teaching replacement behaviors. You shouldn't have many replacement behaviors to teach if you do a good job of preventing. And I hope you'll get a chance to go back and watch the other one that we did, because I don't want to repeat all of it. So data.
And if I could interrupt you just for a minute, Chris, I'm sorry. So we do have some live viewers, so feel free to post your questions. But also, if you missed last week's show, I'll put in the description the link for that video. And if you want copies of Chris's slides, just type the word slides in the comments below, and I'll give you the link for all her slides. So thank you.
So the first thing you're going to do, and welcome everyone who's with us today, the first thing you're going to do is do a functional behavior assessment. And that's where you're going to see why a child is doing what they're doing. That's the point of a functional behavior assessment. If you're a parent and the school says the psychologist is doing a FBA, and we'll get it to you, you stop right there and go, I don't think you can really do a functional behavior assessment without me telling you what I think, because I'm going to have a better understanding of why my child's doing what they're doing. So the first thing you want to do is say, go get some data and show me what you're worried about, what the problem is, and what we can do about it together. You are on the functional behavior assessment team, so you do have to get the data. A lot of times decisions are made in schools that are not based on data. He runs, and I've used running because running is a popular problem with children in school. Running, hitting, biting, they're all popular problems that we have, and they're all communication problems, but we need some data. And the data doesn't just say, well, he ran out of the class 14 times today. The data has to include when he ran out of the class, what was going on in the class, who was with him in the class. That's how you really start developing your functional behavior assessment. What is going on when the child does something that someone else feels is a problem? And remember, the behavior problem, it should be on both sides. The child should feel it's a problem, and the teacher and parent should feel it's a problem. They should both recognize that the child should recognize this is not getting me what I want. And I do have something that I want that should be honored. And the parent should say, I think this is giving you what you want, because it always ends up just being a meltdown or it's not going well. So if we have data as to when it's happening, how often it's happening, what time of day, who's with the child, all that data that goes in around looking at a problem, we can start making some decisions. When I go into a class, I do 2-minute data, which means I sit there with my phone. I'll show you. I sit there with my phone. Looks like I'm texting madly, and I write down what the child is doing every 2 minutes. I also write down what the rest of the children are doing. So if the child happens to be watching the teacher, the 2 minutes that I'm looking at it, and I just, during that 2-minute time, the child was watching the teacher, and then I put, but nobody else was. The rest of the children were watching a video, and the child was watching the teacher. So that's a problem. But maybe I'm going to say, okay, this child was up wandering around the room. 7 other children were wandering around the room, or they were walking around the room. The teacher didn't see that as wandering, but it was happening at the same time. So that every 2 minutes, you're writing down what the class is doing and what the child's doing. At the end, and I just text it to myself. So at the end, you go print that off, and you have a really good picture of what's going on during that day. It's one of the best data forms that I use is the phone and just texting it, because you can do it very quickly. You can add little comments in. You can get it all there. You don't need a paper pencil. You don't need a clipboard. Just have your little phone walking around and doing it. It's very easy to do.
So, Chris,
Anyone can take
Chris,
that data.
Yeah, a question about that. So if you're doing that in 2-minute segments, then typically how long of an observation are you doing in one time that you're visiting the school?
Well, usually I do it all day.
Okay.
So and by the end of the day, I'm probably not being as my integrity of the 2 minutes falls apart. But when I get started and I'm in a classroom setting, I just sit in the back of the room and do it every 2 minutes, as long as I can possibly be in that classroom. And then when the child goes down the hall, I do it. And like I said, by the end of the day, or if I run into a situation where it's just so bizarre, I was in one situation where it was a music class, and all the children were singing except the child I was observing. She was over banging on the piano in the back of the room, and nobody seemed to care. And I thought, this is so wrong that I'm not even going to take data on it. I mean, this child should be sitting down with everyone else and singing. But the child was just allowed to do whatever she wanted to do. And the teacher was very disrespectful to that child and her disability to say, well, you're so disabled, you can't sing with the kids, so we're just going to make you just go live your life over here. And so I didn't take 2-minute data on that. I just wrote down, oh my gosh, this is bad. Because there was no reason the child like me, she could have done it. She just, if nobody asked you to, and you see all these fun things to go play with, well, of course you're going to do that. Any child would. So when you're going to change things, and this is the prevention, don't forget that you can change the physical setting, the task demands, the curriculum, the instructional pace, or the reinforcer. Now, you can change anything you want to change once you have an individual IEP. You can do things very differently, and you have to be creative. So I have a young man who has extreme executive functioning issues right now, cannot do assignments, cannot do them. You can sit down when you put the paper and the pencil in front of him and say, okay, write your name on the paper, and it's just like, it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. He can tell you a million reasons why it didn't happen, but it doesn't happen. So the school is like, well, we'll do the typical accommodations. We'll cut the assignments down. We'll allow him to work at his own pace. They put all these things in place. But the problem is, he couldn't get off the mark. He has executive functioning disorder. He can't start. You can give him one problem. He can't start. You can give him 20. He can't start. So I said, you need to be creative. Take him for a walk down the hall. Get him a Coke, Pepsi, either one, doesn't matter. Walk down the hall and have a conversation about the things that were on the assignment. And if it was English and you were studying Hamlet, ask him, can you spell Hamlet? That'd be first. And what was what happened? And who was Hamlet? And did you like that? And do you know anything about Shakespeare? And then just have a conversation with him because he loves to talk. That's changing everything. The physical setting, the task demands, the curriculum stayed the same. They were all studying Hamlet. The instructional pace was very different. He just had to listen. And the reinforcer was given to him while he was doing it. You're walking down the hall with another teacher or the teacher that was teaching the class, and you were drinking a Pepsi. That's really a different way of assessing a child's knowledge. And you would have thought that I had said to them, I want you to build a new school building and have all this tech brought in and do something phenomenal, set them up on the moon to do it. No, to me, it was like such an easy solution to a child who loved to chat but couldn't get off the mark. So you have to be that creative, and you can't say, well, we require all the children to do, how will we grade him? I said, you just grade him on, does he know it or not? I mean, you asked him the questions, could he answer them? You don't need much more than that. You go back to the teacher and say, he knows this, pass him, he knows it. And and the important thing about knowing about Hamlet, what is important about that? Well, if you ever go to a party and they're serving really nice martinis and someone says, hey, did you go see Hamlet in New York City? Did you see the play? And you went to see it, you're going to be able to talk about the play and have some understanding of how that play relates to the original Shakespeare. It's like, wow, that would be the reason to know this material. There's no other reason to know it, except that you can talk about it and look reasonably intelligent at some other time in your life. So trying to convince people of that is a little tricky. Trying to go into an IEP meeting and say, we're tossing out all the ways that you measure a child, and we're going to bring in all these different ways of doing it, and you're just going to accept that and calm down and relax and go, that's a pretty good idea, let's try it, is very difficult. So that's why I go to IEPs, and that's why you go to IEPs, so you can sit there and say, let's try something different. So let's talk about teaching some new skills that you might not have thought of as new skills to teach. You're not going to teach a child. Teaching a child a new skill is not teaching a child to sit in a chair when he wanders around. That's not a new skill. That child knows how to sit in a chair. If you had to, sit them down to have lunch, they know how to sit down. They have that skill. They're just not doing it at the time you want them to. And the reason they're not doing it at the time you want them to is because these are the skills they probably don't have. They probably don't have good communication skills. And we should do one on that. We should do a meeting just talking about improving communication. Bring in a speech therapist or somebody who does pragmatic language, someone who really understands communication. So if your child communicates by standing up and leaving the room, that's his communication. You can't, unethical to take that away. That's how we let you know, whew, done here. This is way too stressful. Gotta go. So teaching him to sit in his chair for 50 minutes is not the skill we're talking about. The skills we want to teach him are, okay, maybe we would prefer before he get up and left the room, he just raised his hand and said, I'm leaving the room. And you could go, all right, where are you going? Because that's the important thing you need to know when he leaves the room. Not that he's leaving, not that he's why you're stressed out, not the time to talk about that, but where are you going if you're leaving the room? So the skill you're going to teach the child is communicate with me in a way that we can both benefit from, that you are leaving the room, I'm good with that, but where are you going? And that's just improving communication. And now it's not a behavior problem. It's only a behavior problem if he leaves the room and nobody knows where he is for the rest of the day, which does happen. So we want to make sure that our children have whatever communication they're using, we are spending time learning their communication system and then moving forward with a communication system that helps them get what they need without having to have a meltdown. The other thing we have to teach people is how to handle anxiety. That's a skill. Like, we're all going to get anxious in life, but how we handle it is really important, that we know how to do this. So if the child handles anxiety by throwing things, probably not the best way to deal with it. You're not going to teach the child not to throw. You're going to teach the child how to handle anxiety. That's the skill. So how do we do that? Well, we have to set up moments where he gets anxious. We have to do things to the child that are going to make him upset. For instance, he goes to get his coat at the end of the day. It's not there. He will become very anxious. You step in and say, communication, we're going to teach it first of all. We're going to do some relaxation. We're going to find out the thing to do when you're anxious is to go to an adult and tell them why you're upset. My coat is gone. You're going to talk about how that feels. When you saw your coat was gone, you felt all upset inside. You didn't know what to do. You wouldn't be able to get home. You'd miss the bus. You couldn't leave without your coat. Your mom would get mad. All these thoughts went in your head. So you need to learn to take all those thoughts and say, what do I do? Next step. And then you help them outline steps. When you're anxious, go stand next to the teacher. Stand next to the teacher until the teacher goes, what's wrong? Now, for little children, that's very difficult to go stand next to the teacher, because they go next to the teacher, go, teacher, 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 teacher. And then the teacher says, that's not, you need to go sit down. Oh, this is great. Now I don't have a coat and I have to go sit down and nobody's listening. And now I'm going to have a meltdown. So what you again have to teach the child, if you come up to me when you're upset and you just put your hand on my shoulder, I'll know that you have something really important and that you're upset. And if you get really more upset because I can't turn, you can squeeze my shoulder as hard as you want. Because I will turn and say, do you have a problem? Is something wrong? My coat's not in the coat room. Oh, we had to move the coats, and then the teacher makes up some excuse as to why the coat wasn't there and puts it back and gives them the coat. And he realizes, okay, now we've learned a whole new skill set. We go to the teacher when we're upset, we touch the teacher's shoulder when we're upset, and we grab on as tight as we have to. And the teacher, that's a good thing. The teacher can go, okay, we are really upset now. I can feel that. And can turn to that child and tell the other child, you need to wait because this person is really upset about something. And if you were really upset about something, I would stay with you, but you're okay, so I'm turning to this child. So anytime a child reacts to anxiety with a meltdown or with something that doesn't work for him, like teacher, 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 you need to give them another skill set. Not to go sit down, not a skill set that doesn't resolve the issue. It needs to be a skill set that will help you help him. We need to teach children to cope with frustration. All children need to learn to cope with frustration. That's an important skill. We are going to get frustrated. We're all going to get stuck in traffic. We're all going to be late to a meeting because the guy put the sign up that said stop right when your car got up to the construction area. And you're going to be frustrated. Your phone's not going to work so you can call somebody. You're going to be frustrated. And today, when we were trying to get on today, the sound didn't work. And I watched Charmaine get frustrated with the sound. But she did exactly the right thing. She called somebody who said, you need to press this button, and she did, and everything was fine. She didn't just start to cry. She didn't throw her computer. She didn't have a meltdown. I thought she might have gone there, but she didn't. She was really contained it and said, I'm going to get help. I'm going to get help, which is the best way. But what if you can't get help? What if the person didn't answer the phone? You have to be able to let things go. Sometimes you get frustrated and you go, well, it's just not going to work today. Sorry about that. And then you can walk away without feeling guilty. That's a great skill to learn because we all get frustrated. We all end up trying to fix something we can't fix. We don't go for help. And then we just sit there being upset inside and feeling bad about ourselves. We become awful people because we couldn't fix it. So children need to be placed in situations where it's impossible to fix something. So let's see, maybe their computer doesn't work right. Their iPad doesn't come on. You do something to it so that it doesn't come on. And when it doesn't come on, they get very frustrated. And when they get very frustrated, you have to teach them, say, you know what, we just have to set that aside, and then later on someone else will help us fix it. And then to learn to take frustration and go, this is something I can't fix, something I can't make right. I just have to let it go. And I don't know if you hear a little barking in the background right now, but I do have a puppy who I may have to yell at. Because my puppy's frustrated right now. So just a moment. Shh, go lay down. And that is, from then on, you're going to see she's not good with dogs. So the next thing is anger management. We have to teach children to manage their anger. We don't want children that pick up desks and throw them across the room. Some kids need to call their moms on a cell phone when they're upset. They just need to call their mom. And that is for schools. Oh, we do not allow cell phones in the school. They cannot have their cell phone going in the school. They may not have their cell phone. They just want to call their mom. Now, mom answers the phone and says, what's the problem? Well, I'm very upset with the teacher. She asked me to do an assignment, and I don't know how to do it. I'm very, very upset. And mom says, well, let the teacher know you're very upset and to give you the assignment, and maybe you can work on it later with your aide, or maybe you can bring it home. But let's just relax. And the child kind of chills a little bit and calms down, goes back to the teacher and says, well, you're in trouble now. Call my mom. Who cares? The child does not throw a desk. And that's the behavior we don't want. So if anger management means you have to call your mom and your mom has to go, ooh, 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 and then you're okay again, that's fine. Because when you're young, or even, as I said with Charmaine, she called Kyle, and Kyle went, ooh, 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 and she fixed it, and she was fine. We all need to call somebody to help diffuse the anger. So when a school says your child can't use a cell phone to call for help, then you need to put that in the IEP that they can use the cell phone. Well, they'll just be using it all day long. They'll just call you all day long. And mom says, you know what? By the third call, he can leave a message, and I will have on my phone that says, I know you're upset. I'm busy right now. I'll call you later. Go talk to the principal. Go talk to your counselor, as a message for him. So the child knows he's been heard. Mom knows he's upset. He can move to someone else if he has to. I mean, you can work on that. You don't have to pick up the phone 50 times if the child keeps calling you. You can work on it. I've seen some very bad plans. The worst ones are when you put a consequence in an anger plan to teach a child. I'm going to teach the child not to slap the teacher across the face. I've seen kids that do that. So the way that we teach the child not to slap the teacher across the face was to send him home. And it got down to the child walked through the school door, first adult he saw, whack, and he was sent home. And it's like, I don't think that's where you were going with this program. So they would have to call mom to come get him as soon as he slapped a teacher. He liked going home. He had a very nice mother and a very nice home. So mom was, how do I get the school not to do it? So now mom's doing a behavior program on the school. And they gave her a pager so that every time he slapped someone, they could page her right away and she could come get him within 5 minutes. It's the most effective program for teaching a child to slap someone quicker and quicker and quicker. So finally she lost the pager. And I don't know where it is. I can't answer. I don't know where the pager is. This was a while back when we had pagers, not cell phones. And eventually the school went, well, if mom can't come right away, then he gets to sit here in the school. And guess what? The behavior went away because mom wasn't coming to get him right away. So you have to be really careful with if you start moving toward consequences. And we'll hopefully get to that a little bit today. And the last thing that you have to teach a child is how to regulate their sensory issues. So if you have a child that needs to move a lot because they just need a lot of sensory input, you have to allow that child to walk. If you have a child that needs to rock to calm down, you have to find a way to make that rocking okay in your classroom. If you have a child that you see they're just winding up and they need to go chill, you bring in an occupational therapist who has sensory regulation background and sensory integration disorder background, and they will give you a sensory diet. So across the day, the child does certain things to calm them physically. Because you can't have both. You can't have someone who's frustrated and then their sensory regulation goes up, and now you have physical reaction to the frustration and you are dead in the water for helping that problem. So you have to make sure that you've got the child is regulated across the day so that when you get frustrated, you don't have the physical reaction happening at the same time. Now you can see by looking at these things, I'm not telling you teaching a child a new skill, how to walk down the hall quietly is not the new skill we're talking about. The new skill we're talking about isn't how to keep your hands to yourself when you're walking down the hall. That's not teaching a new skill. The new skill is how can you deal with going down a hall with a lot of people in it when that makes you crazy because your sensory disorder starts just going nuts. So you have to touch walls, you have to touch people, you have to dance, you have to run, you have all these things that happen to you physically because you can't handle that hallway. So what do you do about a situation like that? Well, you don't attack the behavior, the running, the hitting, the touching the wall. You attack the sensory issues. So before you walk down the hall, you go jump on a trampoline for about 10 times. Before you walk down the hall in the classroom, you make sure the child, if he needs to do some jumping jacks, he does that. And you have him grounded before you put him in an area where there's high ceilings, echoing noises, and lots of people. So you take care of that with prevention. And then when you walk down the hall, you know you're not dealing with a sensory disorder issue. You're just dealing with someone who looked down the hall and thought, I think running is going to be really cool. Because everybody wants to run down the hall. It's like a wide open space. Who wouldn't want to run down the hall? So now you're trying to stop a child from doing something, but it's strictly a behavior. So you're going to teach him, you're going to walk down the hall with him, you're going to hold the child's hand, you're going to do a lot of other things to help him walk down the hall. But you're not even going to try that if you haven't taken care of the sensory integration disorder before you left the classroom. Do we have any questions?
So Chris, if I can interrupt you for a minute. So I just, had this aha moment when you were talking about that, because I think when we look at most behavior intervention plans and they have the prevention activities and then they have the new, I forget, behaviors they're going to teach or whatever, however that section is titled. And that's what I see so often in behavior plans are those things of, keep your hands to yourself or, all of these kind of traditional rules that we have for kids. And what you're saying is instead, as parents and teachers, we need to look, and that's why that FBA is helpful, of underlying reasons why the child is doing that. And that's the level that we need to solve things and create positive supports versus waiting for that behavior to occur and then, reacting in a way that's not going to be helpful. So I just think what you said is like such a golden nugget for all of us that that in itself could make such a huge difference for how kids are treated respectfully in classrooms.
I think we forget to normalize behaviors, and when I work with teachers, I always say, now let's talk about when you left home this morning. How many times did you have to go back to your home? Like, how many times did you go back to make sure you turn the coffee pot off? Oh, you forgot your phone. You forgot your lunch. And then you'll have teachers that they've gone back twice, 3 times. And I said, the reason you do that is because you don't want to leave your home. You don't want to transition. So in order to avoid transitioning, your brain lets you forget a lot of things. So you can keep going back and touching base again. Whoop, touch base, touch base. And then finally you're okay, you're ready to move forward, but you have to go through this little ritual. People will lose it, and then people go, whoa. I said, so why would you expect a child who can't really visualize what's going to happen in the next classroom? Why would you expect them to be able to move easily from one activity to another without coming back and doing a lot of ritualistic behavior? So we all have to look at that. And then another thing I tell people to look at, when you're upset, what do you lose? And I always lose my car keys. This is how I know, ooh, you're having a hard day today. You don't even know it. You don't even think about it. But when you go to get your car keys, where'd they go? I can't find them. Or you lose your purse, which I lost my purse the other night. I was having a bad day, lost my purse. I had everybody in the house looking for my purse, calling places, where did I leave my purse? Well, it had slipped down in a place where it was very obvious if I thought about it. I woke up at 2 in the morning. I said, I know where that is, because I finally relaxed and could find it. But it was a very tense day. I had a lot of people over, and my anxiety was up. And then I did something. My body said, you are overwhelmed. And so I'm going to take care of that. I'm going to give you something stupid to be overwhelmed about. And you're going to put all your energy in that, and then you're going to regulate, which is exactly what happened. So you have to normalize these behaviors that you see in children. You can't say, oh, this is a terrible behavior this child has, and then turn around and in some way you do exactly the same thing. And the more we can do that, the more we can identify with, this is what I do when I'm anxious, this is what I do when I'm frustrated, this is what I do when I'm upset. Then you can look at a child and go, oh, yeah, behavior is totally linked to where you are emotionally. And that's what you need to take care of that. You need to calm down, relax, and then everything will fall into place. So the other thing I wanted to talk about, and I don't even think I have a slide on this, so I'm going to do what you told me to do before, because we're going to run out of time. You said, stop sharing so people can just see me. And let's see, there, I did it. Yay. One of the things that I wanted to talk about, and I want you to go online and look up all things on visual schedules, and I think we need to have someone come in and do something about that, because if we're talking about teaching children new behaviors, we have to make sure they have a visual schedule. Now everybody thinks, oh, pictures, pictures, pictures. It can be words. You can do a visual schedule on an iPad in 10 minutes. You can download a visual schedule app for $15 if you want to pay. They probably have them for free now. And you can put a visual schedule in, and you can take pictures of the child doing the activity, rearrange them in the order that you want them in. You can rearrange them during the day as the child's working on them. It's so easy. When I go into a classroom and I say, where's this visual schedule? And they go, well, we're working on that. The speech therapist is doing it. We needed some Velcro. It's like, whoa, whoa. Welcome to 2017. Where's his iPad? And then you download it. You say, look, let's take a picture of him in this class. Take a picture of him walking in the hall. Take a picture of him going out to recess. Take a picture of everything he needs to wear in the winter out to recess. Give him as much support for communication as you can. Now, here's the part where visual schedules become a teaching tool. You have 5 things that the child's going to do that day, and you want to make sure they get them all done. So during the first hour of class, you're going to have them they're going to read something, and they're going to draw something, and they're going to copy something off the board, and maybe they're going to do coloring things. So maybe there's 4 things they're going to do. The child, you put them all on the visual schedule. You can do it in 2.5 seconds. Boom, 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 boom. Pictures all up there. And then you look at the child and you say, what do you want to do first? And that gives the child choice and control. And once you give someone choice and control, you're not saying you don't have to do anything, but what do you want to do first? What do you want to do second? What do you want to do now? Okay, we've got one left. Do you want to do it? Now, that gives the child some sense of, I'm being listened to, I'm being heard. And you say, well, nobody else needs that. Everybody else just does it the way they're told to do it. Everybody else doesn't do it just the way they're told to do it. And if you sit in a class like I do and observe children, you'll see children going, oh, I'm going to do this other thing first. And they take out the other thing and do it first. And they rearrange everything on their own. They drift off to their happy place for like at least 15 minutes where they're just kind of staring around the room. They might tie their shoe. They might walk over and get a pencil that, oh, I've got my favorite pencil out of my backpack. They have all sorts of ways of dealing with your demands. At the end of the hour, they've got everything done, but they also did a whole bunch of other things that they like to do. They stopped and talked to their friend. They snuck a candy out of their backpack. They did all, which you let happen because they were being productive and you knew, you said, oh, they'll get it done. I know they'll do it all. They just like to do it in different order. If you have a disability, not an option. You have an aid stick standing next to you that goes, okay, do this one. Now we have to do this, and now we have to do that. And you have to finish. You have to finish. If you don't finish, we can't move on to the next thing. Where the other typically developing child went, yeah, I don't want to do the rest of it. I'm tired of this. So they put it away and do something else. The teacher comes by and says, you didn't finish. They go, oh, okay, I'll do it now. Well, they knew they didn't finish, but everybody's like, okay with that. You have to normalize behavior. So visual schedules have to allow a child to be more normal, not less normal. And visual schedules have to allow a child choice and control. So if you have a visual schedule that just tells a kid what to do, it's not going to work. And they're going to say, well, they don't need it. They know what to do. It's all about choice. And a child who can make choices will be a child that doesn't have behavior problems. So I just wanted to hit that. Do we have any questions here? Because I don't know what else to go into.
Yeah, we don't, we have people on live and they're being very quiet today and not asking questions.
Very fast.
I do have a question, but I'm going to wait for you to go through your presentation. But yeah, I encourage people. I see you're here with us live, so type in questions you have, because that way you can get responses back from Chris, and we can brainstorm some solutions while we're here live.
Okay, and I'm trying to figure out why I don't see my PowerPoint anymore. That's not what I wanted to look at. Uh-oh, that's not it. It says I'm sharing it.
Yeah, I don't see it. So did you click on PowerPoint when you went to share screen?
There we go.
There you go. Magically.
So just a little bit about behavior. When you're looking at them, there's three kinds of behaviors. There's distractible behaviors, disruptive behaviors, and destructive behaviors. Distractible behaviors are usually ones that I find, the behaviors, I call them chuckle behaviors, where a child does something that just kind of makes you chuckle. That's funny. You know, it's the class clown. It's the child that when you say, walk this way, and then they imitate how you're walking. It's just a child with a great sense of humor, and they do things that are very distractible to the rest of the class. It's a child that can be the informal leader in your classroom, and it's a good thing for sometimes, because it'll be the child that when you're teaching and it's really boring, they're the child that will sit there going, oh, and make everybody else laugh, and then you go, okay, this is really boring, or it's really hard. They go, I don't know what you're talking about. So they're behaviors that distract you from teaching. They also can be behaviors where a child's tapping a pencil, but they're not behaviors that are doing anything except distracting you from getting the job done and distracting other children from paying attention to you. They are communicating something. They're communicating that child's bored, that child's having difficulty. And if you attend to distractible behaviors in the right way, you probably won't go to disruptive or destructive behaviors. This kind of moves up in my mind. A child that has disruptive behaviors is a child that has done something and you have ignored their first communication, I'm having trouble, and so they're now going to be disruptive and knock something off your desk or break pencils or do something that is just, you can't ignore. And if you still continue, if you don't take care of that appropriately, a child goes on to being destructive. I have a lot of people say, you don't understand. They were just sitting there and he just walked along and just like punched me right in the arm, or he just bit me, just leaned over and bit me for no reason. But then you take out your phone and you go, okay, well, I'll tell you, for the last 10 minutes, that child had been telling you that they were so bored with what you were doing, and you just kept going and making them do one more, and you kept saying, just finish this one more and we'll be done, and then you did another one and another one and another one, and it was never going to be over. So he finally decided, here, I'm going to stop that, I'm going to bite your arm, and then you're going to be off on some other tangent like, no biting, you're not supposed to bite, look at you bit me and now you're in trouble. But guess what? We don't have to do that assignment anymore, so that worked, didn't it? Now, the communication that the child needs is some way just to touch the paper and push it away, which they probably had done 10 times, and you go, oh, I think you're done. I do think you're done. And I'm going to honor that you're done, because if I don't honor it, you're going to bite me, and I don't really want you to do that. So I'm going to actually listen to you. And we're going to end with motivational assessment, even though I won't have enough time to cover this in depth, but this is something that you'll see online by a lot of different people covering it. So if you look up motivational assessments, you will probably see assessments, and you will see these reasons. And we kind of talked about those. So the reasons why people do what they do. The most common reason people do things that are wrong, we all, that's not right, you shouldn't do that, is to get some sensory gratification. So they're either trying to regulate themselves and get rid of some overload, so they're going to regulate themselves and they do something to do that, or they're just not getting enough sensory input and they act out to get more sensory input on something, or they're overwhelmed. Usually, there's something going on internally or externally that makes a person change their behavior from being calm and cooperative to being very difficult to be around. So we always want to look at that first. It's the frustration, the anxiety, all that. Look at that first. Communication. Don't even go anywhere until you know that's okay. The other reason people do things that they shouldn't do, or we don't particularly approve of, is they're trying to get out of doing something. And we all do that. And sometimes escape behaviors are very nice. If you're trying to not get a traffic ticket after the policeman has stopped you, you're usually quite nice about it, and you chat and you compliment them, and you find any way you just make up excuses that are total lies, and you just hope that somehow that policeman's going to look at you and say, oh, she looks like my mom, and he's not going to give you a ticket. I mean, you're hoping for that. But you're using all these very nice behaviors to get out of doing something. And that's very common for children with autism who the activity is very difficult for them. And they have speech and they have communication, but their communication isn't being used well. I have communication to a policeman, and I could say, you're absolutely right, I was speeding and you should give me a ticket. I'm not going to use that communication. I'm going to go, what? And I can't believe that. You're kidding. It must be this car. It was just, I think my speedometer's broken. You can use all sorts of things to escape the consequence that you're going to get if he looks at you and goes, you were speeding, I'm giving you a ticket. So children who are high functioning with autism or other disabilities will use that same type of communication. It doesn't help. It doesn't do you any good. You can't move on to, you really need to slow down. You're driving too fast. The other reason children use behaviors, and this is more common in younger children, not so much teenagers, they really don't want attention, but little children will do whatever they can to get your attention. And that's where you get the teacher, 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 and the dumping something on the floor, or, moving their desk or poking their neighbor, because they want more attention than they're getting. The solution to these, and the last one is a tangible, they actually want something. They want a cookie, or they want they want something very real and concrete. Now, when you're talking about a behavior program, what you don't say is, this child needs more attention. So what I'm going to do is, unless he's good, I'm not going to give him any attention. Because that's not going to work. If a child needs more attention, it's like a child they're thirsty, they need to drink water. So what you do is you give them more attention, and the problem should go away. If they need to escape an assignment or a difficult task, you find a way for them to not have to do it. Or you find a way that you can get them to do it that's not painful. And then they'll be fine. So when you look at why a child's doing something, it doesn't mean, now that I know you want attention, I'm not going to give it to you. Now that I know that your sensory integration disorder is just going ballistic, I'm going to put you with a lot of people till you just get used to it. Or now that I know that you want to use this fancy pencil to do your assignment, I'm going to throw that away. That's not what you see. It even sounds mean when I say it, but that's how behavior programs are built. They build them that way. Like, we take away what a child needs until they change their behavior, and then we'll give it to them. It makes no sense. You should give it to them, and then the behavior will change. And so, Charmaine, what's your take on that? Because I'm sure you run into the same thing a lot.
Well, yeah, and like you said, it's like it just sounds very punitive, because you look at those our basic needs that we all have, and so to withhold something that is, a basic human need, to me is like so punitive that I would really have to have, some more conversation with staff that held those kinds of beliefs.
But most behavior plans, that's where they're going.
Exactly.
Is once you give me the behavior I want, I will give you what you want. And that's the exact opposite to positive behavior supports. People tend to think that positive behavior supports means I'm going to reward you for doing the right thing. And it isn't that at all. It's saying I'm going to fulfill your needs so that the behavior will change. We're pretty good with infants that way. We weren't always. I mean, when I was born, it was a long time ago, children were put on 4-hour schedules, and you didn't feed them till that 4 hours was up. That was like, you let them scream because you didn't want that child controlling your life. Well, now, total change on that. When a child cries, you feed them. A child cries, you pick them up. A child cries, you comfort them. And guess what? Babies don't cry as much. And people say, well, you're just giving them what they want. Yeah. Yeah. That's absolutely true. If they want attention, you're going to give it to them. So why does this suddenly change when a child gets to a point where we want control over them? And especially for a child with a disability who's expressing, these are the needs I have. I need to have an environment where they don't have fluorescent lights. I need to have an environment where I'm really not sitting next to two people who are touching me. I need to have an environment where when it gets overwhelming, I can leave. I need to have an environment where people are paying attention to me, even though I might not be responding. Then I need to have an environment where I'm getting my needs met when I need to drink water or whatever else. I need that. And if you provide all that, I'm going to be a really good kid. But if you wait for me to be a good kid, to give it to me, I'm never going to be a good kid. And I think that's the philosophy of positive behavior supports. Fill the need, you'll get the child that you want. Don't fill the need and you won't. So I'm very anti-timeout and anti-anything that says, I'm going to put you somewhere until you're going to be good. And I think our prison system has shown that that's not an effective way of dealing with things. Again, to normalize it, this is what we do. So we put a child in a timeout room until you need to go into timeout. And what? And what? Not need water, not need to take a walk, not need to understand the assignment. You just need to go in timeout and think about what you did wrong. And so when I come in and work with children, it's fill the need, and you'll have a child that works well with you. So I'm going to end it there because I can still go on forever.
Well, and so I want to remind folks that you can go to chriscurryconsulting.com and find out more about her resources. She has a wonderful way that she can stay in touch with you, where you can set up times that you can call her. She has the Chris Curry Club. And to me, like, this would be the best resource and use of your time, is to be able to brainstorm with Chris, because she does have this wealth of experience and all of that expertise that she brings to situations. And I just really encourage folks to tap into that. The one question that I have for you, Chris, is something that recently came up, and I had a school psychologist talk about, there's a difference between behaviors that are because, how the disability impacts a child and behaviors that a child just chooses. And this is from a school that pretty much keeps saying the child is choosing this behavior and not recognizing that it's really, truly an impact of their disability. Like when you were talking about executive functioning, with a student that, doesn't have the skills to be organized and keep their work organized and turn it in and take notes and do all of these behaviors we expect. And instead of the staff recognizing that as, oh, we could be teaching them how to take notes. And instead it's like, no, you have to show us that you can do this. So I don't know if you have any other words of wisdom because the school wants to do a functional behavior assessment. However, I think they already have this conclusion in mind that it's a choice versus a lagging skill. So how does a parent, deal with that kind of attitude or position that a staff is taking?
Well, I never go alone to an IEP where that's happening. You should never be the one to challenge the school if you're a parent, because they're going to just say, well, you're just a parent. But here's my question when that happens, when a school says, well, we think it's very purposeful. That child knows what he's doing. He doesn't have to do that, and he could change if he wanted to. I always look at them and go, and what if you're wrong? What if you're absolutely wrong? What if it is the disability? Let's err on the side that it's a disability. Because if you're wrong and it's a disability, and you say it's a disability, and you give them help, and they do their work, hooray, hooray. But if you're wrong, and you say it's purposeful and it's not, you're damaging the child, you're not teaching the child, nothing's going to happen. So that's always my question. I go, yeah, but what if you're wrong? And which way should you go? If you're going to possibly be wrong, where should you be wrong? And I say, err on the side of the disability. And that usually helps them rethink it, because it's pretty much a power struggle if they've gotten down to, he could do it if he wanted to. And you say, I know that. And I'm sure he wants to. And he's not. So let's help him do it. That's my words of wisdom. What if you're wrong?
I love it. Yeah, and that can be something that parents can ask in a lot of different situations, and to, like you say, that's to err on the side of what's the least dangerous assumption that we can make here.
Right.
And if we can provide tools and help the student, then by not allowing that support to happen I can't imagine what that would feel like as a child, to be in that kind of a situation where, 7 hours a day, 5 days a week, people are telling you, you could just choose to be more responsible than just nagging you, versus like, help me and I will figure this out. But otherwise, the child is going to be really stuck.
So, well, it's been really fun. I've really enjoyed doing this again. And hopefully we can do it another time, and maybe on communication, or maybe the listeners will write in something they would like us to talk about, because we both have a lot of experience, and I felt like I did all the talking, and you should actually be sharing a lot of your experiences too.
No, that's why you're here, because I love to learn from you too. So it's a way that I can kind of recalibrate what I'm doing when I help support families as an advocate. But thank you so much for your time, and I know we'll get more people watching the replay and questions coming up. And so I might be contacting you and say, Chris, somebody's asking this.
Anytime. And do call me if people have questions. I think my phone number is, it's on those sheets that you're giving people. So
Right. Sounds great.
Okay.
Okie dokie. Well, thank you so much, Chris. Have a great rest of your day. Next Thursday is Thanksgiving, so I won't be doing a live show for Thanksgiving. But the week after that, we'll be back at our usual noon time, Mountain Time, and I'll be letting people know what our topic will be for that week after Thanksgiving. But until then, everybody have a wonderful weekend. Take time for your family, do things that are enjoyable, and make some happy memories. And we shall see everybody again. So take care.
Thank
Bye
you.
bye.